So talking about the thematic concerns in the novel Vendor of Suez, the relationship between the father and son becomes very important. So Jagan actually can be considered as a very good father when we step into his shoes and try to understand him. Because Mali is not in a position and he doesn't prove at all that he understands the father well. Right, so that is a different matter. But when we put ourselves into the shoes of Jagan, we understand why he is behaving like this. What has he done for the son, right? So he has his own eccentricities or kind of peculiar ideas, peculiar, strange, odd behavior, uncommon behavior. He makes his own shoes, he makes his own food and clothes, he does everything in his own way, he talks and understands, only certain things. He has his own worldview and his life is totally something unique, something special to him. But he has taken care of the wife. He has never ill-treated anyone. Even after the death of Ambika, he has looked after the son very well, always gave money in the early morning when he went to college, looked after him, was very proud of him, always checked about his friends, school, about his meals like a mother, and it was like a total trouble for Mali. So that much connection, that much care was shown from the side of the father, but it was quite problematic whether that was seen in a positive way by the son. There comes a problem because the son did not understand how much the father cared and loved and thought about him. Right? And the base for the problem was that Jagan represents a particular generation, Mali represents another particular generation, old versus modern generation. On the other hand, with their world view, with their understanding, with their exposure, with their education, with their beliefs, also they show two perspectives, two ideas. What are they? Jagan represents traditional ideas. Mali represents European modern ideas. So when two people are having two different ideas, do you think that they can get along well? They can have a close, fine, nice relationship? Not really. Right, so whenever there are different ideas, even among friends, right, those who are having similar ideas flock together, right, or stay together, right? So that's quite common. Same here. So the relationship between the father and son is quite distant and quite disturbing throughout the novel. So in other words, we can say Jagan is a traditional father and he always refers to religious scripts of Hinduism and very much a devotional character to religion and to Gandhism. And throughout his life, he has led a very orthodox life. And what is orthodox? Like traditional. Harima Gathanugatikkai, right? But Mali is so different. Even though Mali is under the same roof, Mali is not influenced or affected. Mali is not affected by the religious, cultural, traditional and orthodox practices of his father. He thinks in a different way. He always wanted not to study in a college, but to explore the modern things. He wanted to go beyond the Malgudi city. He wanted to fly to America and study there. He wanted to have a new business idea. He did not marry an Indian girl, but brought a foreign wife. So everything is regarding modernity, new things. Whatever the father says, Mali has a different idea, opposite, viruddha idea. So always there's a collision, there is a fight, right? So when we try to understand the relationship between the father and son, we can always try to, think, okay, how do they respond to each other? right? How do they manage the kind of verbal fights they have? And in one place in the novel, Jagan says that, whatever they talk, he is scared even this conversation will end up with the fight. I mean, not physical, but verbal fight, misunderstanding, lack of understanding, or argument, right? There is no mutual understanding, right? There is no even like when we really think about them, there is no mature parinata, very deep understanding in them about tradition and modernity. ඒ දෙන්නගේ පැත්ත ගැන හිතන්නේ නැහැ. Mali doesn't understand about father's point of view. තාත්තා හිතන ක්‍රමයට එයා තේරුම් ගන්න උත්සාහ කරන්නේ. Jagan doesn't understand how Mali thinks. It's kind of common thing because they come from different exposure, different backgrounds, different educational contexts. They represent two generations. It's not easy for them to come to an understanding, come to a decision, come to a mutual understanding. තේරුම් ගැනීමකට එන්න පහසු නැහැ. It's not easy, right? And finally, now most of you have read the novel, we know, and I can tell it also now that the Jagan finally goes for a retreat. And he's fed up with Mali and the work. He's depressed about his life, and he goes for a retreat to stay in the temple, buying the land, as suggested by the bearded man Chinnadore. So there, in a way, we wonder by the end of the novel, has Jagan understood the difference? අපිට අන්තිම novel එකේ එක වෙලාවකට හිතනවා Jaganට තේරුම් අරගෙනද යා මේ යන්නේ, මේ වෙනසක් තියෙනවා, මේක bridge කරන්න අමාරුයි, right? Whatever I do, whatever I say, it's not easy to understand. Make Mali understand things. එයා එතකොට අන්තිම මොහොතේ හිතනවා before going, okay, I think Mali should get a good lesson. I have tried to explain, no point, right? So he hands over the shop to the cousin, goes for a retreat. So by the end of the novel, we sometimes wonder whether, what has really happened, whether Jagan has sort of understood that there are differences. So anyway, throughout the novel, the father seems to be advanced for me because he understands more things. He has better values than Mali. So like that, thematic concern wise, the relationship between a father and a son is one important segment in the novel. Right, going beyond the main theme of the novel, the relationship between the father and the son, there are also other themes like tradition versus modernity. So when we talk about tradition versus modernity, I think everyone can understand Jagan with his behavior and what he does and tells through his practices also becomes a sign or a symbol of tradition, whereas Mali becomes a symbol of modernity. So actually the novel very beautifully contrasts the characteristics of Jagan and Mali in a very interesting way. So you can even put them in a table. Jagan is traditional, Mali is modern. Jagan is always, having or thinks about having a simple life. Mali is always looking forward to a complex life. Jagan does not hurry anything. Like for ages, his book is being printed. Still, there's no proper response. He reminds kindly and it's okay. But Mali, quick, done within few days. His business prospect is done. So like that, quick and slow. So like that, everything is or can be rather contrasted when we think about Mali and Jagan. Just like tradition versus modernity. So when we also think about other factors under this, Jagan being traditional means he is religious. He reads his scriptures. He adheres to the scriptures. He follows Hinduism. He's a simple person. And his main proud priority is always to the religion and to the things that are said and should be done according to the custom. Right? Money is also important, but other things like culture, religion are also important for him. But have you ever seen Mali wondering about religion? He has written with grace from America that he has started eating beef, something that a Hindu will never do, a traditional Hindu will never do. He radically talks about the importance of eating beef in order to stop the hunger issue in India. So that much radical, right? So we also see that, while the father has a very traditional business, Mali puts it down. It's good for nothing, not good for an educated person like me. And Mali comes up with a real industrialized, sort of creative, sort of modern idea for a business, right? That is manufacturing the creative story writing machines, right? And living together using alcohol, going against traditional marriage, all done by Mali. Jharkhand has done quite the opposite. Very, very well organized marriage. The father and the elder brother have chosen the bride. There were proper functions. Everything was under the customs and traditions, right? Things like that. So when we talk about this idea of tradition and modernity, we wonder, actually Jharkhand has gained a lot of success being a traditional man. And Mali is talking about big and modern ideas, but he does not have even capital, Pravdane, to do his business. Finally, he is imprisoned by keeping alcohol in his car and for having wrong connections, right, etc. So who has the success, right? Is it the tradition that is better, or is it always a modernity that is the best thing? We have to embrace modernity, but without chasing away, without kicking out what is good in our tradition. So we have to embrace the good things while protecting and keeping with us the good things that our tradition, our culture, our country brings to us, right? And also, Jharkhand and Mali, if they had, had a better connection, better understanding and a relationship, they would have had, better life, even though they represent two different ideologies, modernity and tradition. Right. And also throughout the novel, with regard to marriage, birth, funeral, we find lots of religious rites, customs, and things like that also, just talking about tradition more. And when there was this conversation about Mali going to America, the things that Jagan and Qasim talk bring out a lot about the American modern lifestyle, right? So you can find lots of examples. Another theme actually that we can focus on is the conflict between the Western and Eastern cultures. I think it is almost the same. Tradition versus modernity means Western versus Eastern. And another thematic concern that we can find out from the novel is marriage, right? So marriage, so traditional marriage, the importance of marriage as a concept, the holiness and purity of a marriage. Then those are with regard to Jharkhand. With regard to Mali, modern concept of marriage, the modern notion of marriage is questioned, living together, the fact that, marriage is not legalized. Those are the things that the writer talks about. So marriage is also another important factor. And especially very touchingly, very emotionally, and very truly, the writer talks about the importance of our values, like the partners being together, looking after each other, right? So Jagan talks about the sick wife, remembers the sick wife, right? He did what he could do, right? But Mali never even knew where Grace had gone sometimes, right? So marriage is another important thematic concern. So like that, basically, we can refer to few themes in the novel as the relationship between a father and son, tradition versus modernity, conflict between the Western and Eastern cultures, and marriage.